Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the sixth episode of Unfiltered Emotions. I'm Ellen, a Humanity Rising ambassador and one of your co-hosts.
Hi, I'm Kairi Harness, one of your other co-hosts. Dr. Magida, it's a pleasure to have you again. Together
Thanks so
we're
much for
gonna,
having me.
yeah, together we're gonna speak on topics such as anxiety, depression, suicide ideations, and the steps we can take to improve our well-being. And today's episode's gonna be on LGBTQ awareness in honor of Pride Month. So, Ellen, start us off with our first slide.
And the first slide that we have is on the LGBTQ umbrella. So, Dr. Magida, would it be possible for you to kind of explain to us the definition for what this acronym means?
So the LGBTQ umbrella is meant to encompass a lot of diversity, including sexualities and genders. It's important to remember that there are more than three sexualities and there's more than, one kind of gender. So the Q often stands for queer, which includes a whole bunch of identities, um, more than lesbian, gay, and bisexual. They aren't the only marginalized sexualities. Transgender isn't the only gender identity. There's lots more. At the bottom, we have an additional note here. For some people, Q doesn't stand for queer, it stands for questioning. And transgender is often thought of as an umbrella term in it of itself, but there's a lot of asterisks there, a lot of other identities and marginalized groups to think of.
Yeah, I know that just looking at this, I can already think of a few that aren't listed. You have like, I believe the LGBT, and then you have LGBTQ, and now you have LGBTQIA. It always is extending because there's always more people and more individual feelings and ideas. Um, there's always more, and every sexuality also has its subgroups. I am aware of those. Like you have bisexuals who can lean towards one or another, and that doesn't make them a girl who likes girls and guys but leans towards guys doesn't mean she's straight.
We're going to talk more about that continuum in a little
Yeah.
bit.
So our next slide is over the gingerbread person. Can you elaborate more on what that is, Dr. Magida?
Yes, the genderbread person was created in order to have a visual of different areas of um, identity, expression, and orientation. The way we think of ourselves, the way we view ourselves in our brain, that is how we identify. That is our self-identity. Um, what we look like on the outside, the way we wear our hair, whether or not we wear makeup, how we wear makeup, what kind of glasses you want to wear, what kind of clothes you want to wear, do you wear nail polish or not? Anything that can be seen on the outside is your gender expression, right? And so the way that you identify and the way that you express yourself don't always hopefully those match, right? So that you can be living your authentic self. Then you have the heart, which represents your attraction to someone, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And then in the genitals region, we have sex or our anatomical sex or the sex we were assigned at birth. And so all of these different things occur and live, exist on a continuum, meaning it's not all or nothing, it's a range. There's for your gender identity, you can identify as a female, you can express yourself as a female, you can have female parts, but then maybe not dress as woman forward. Maybe you don't like to wear makeup. You don't want to curl your hair. You just want you don't mind if you're wearing men's clothes or women's clothes. That doesn't make you any less female, right? Your expression and your identity don't have to match. Then, right, so we have our feminine expression, our masculine expression, and then we have our anatomical sex or sex assigned at birth. But gender identity or identity doesn't equal expression, which doesn't equal your sex. Gender does not equal orientation either. So we have we are sexually attracted to, and then what we are romantically attracted to. And that is something that isn't talked a lot about or enough, right? So who we are sexually attracted to may be the same or different from who you are romantically attracted to. And I think it's also important when we're talking about self-identity and just identity in general, what it's not, right? So this is not a depiction of how an idealized or utopian society might construct gender. It's not perceptive. It's not suggesting that gender should be a certain way. This is not a diagnostic tool to be used or applied to other people. But it is also not a comprehensive model of sexuality or sexual orientation because, like we talked about in the previous slide, there are a lot of subgroups. You can have different identities for each of these areas: gender identity, gender expression, sexually attracted to, romantically attracted to. It does not, you can have an individualized way that you identify within each of those spaces.
And that's why they're all written on in the genderbread person, they're all written on a bar, and it says identity is not expression, is not sex, is not your gender, and is not sexual orientation. They're all individual, so they could all align or they could all be different.
There is no aligning though. Yeah. Because there is no idealized or utopian or constructive gender, there is no should be a certain way. So nothing has to align with anything.
Yes.
That is a notion we need to get away from, right? If you're born female and you identify as female and you express as female and you're attracted to males, then that aligns. And that is not fair or inclusive.
Yeah, because that implies, I believe that would imply that if you're not aligned, then you're wrong. And by being wrong, that is a very rude and very mean point to stand on, is saying that if you don't align a certain way, you're wrong and in the wrong or in some way doing something wrong.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember then that this is so individualized and that there's no boxes or rules about how you feel. Like there's no
and it's
like
fluid.
quantifying that.
Yeah.
Right? So it can change. And that doesn't mean that you're going through a phase or that you just changed your mind or whatever. The person you are at 16 isn't the same person you are at 26 or 36. And so your life and your experiences will and can impact all of these different things in different stages of your life.
And speaking of the expression part, because that's kind of an embodiment of our identities and how we feel, right? How should you respond if someone that you care about, like a friend or a family member, is coming out to you?
Well, there are some really important things to keep in mind. There are some things you don't want to say, right? You don't want to say, oh, I always knew that, or to downplay their significance of sharing that information with you. Because if they share that with you, that's a sign of trust. And that's amazing and should be honored and celebrated. If somebody shares their personal information with you that does not give you permission or an invitation to tell other people, even if you're doing it in a positive way, like you feel like you're bragging about them, like my new trans friend, or, I'm really proud of them for coming out or whatever, make sure that you check in with that friend and ask them about what level of confidentiality they would like you to hold that information in. You're going to show curiosity. You're going to, you can ask questions as long as they are respectful, right? And within line with the information that was given, that does not give you an open-ended invitation to go on a snooping fact-finding mission. Don't assume you know why somebody came out to you. Don't assume that you know about their experience or what they're feeling, and instead ask them how you can best support them. You can thank them for trusting you. You can thank them for their honesty. And then you can ask them, how can I be a source of support? How can I be the best friend to you now in this stage and phase of your coming out journey?
And
There are times where people are going to might have the best of intentions, but are still kind of missing the mark. And they can say things that may be hurtful, maybe because they're using non-inclusive language, maybe they're using bigoted language. You do want to kindly point out the person's mistake. You don't want to shame them in making a mistake. Instead, you do want to provide them with correction for future reference.
And just something really quick. Is it okay for like anyone who happens to overhear such a type of conversation to respond in that way, even if you aren't directly a part of the LGBTQ community? Like if you're an ally, is it still okay for you to correct the other person? Uh,
I think that it's a case by case basis. If you feel comfortable if you feel that it is safe enough for you to do that and to advocate in that way, you certainly can. However, I think that it is equally important to read the room and know when it is okay to essentially admit that you are eavesdropping. And recognize that you don't know that person, so we don't want to make unnecessary assumptions. You can also ask the the LGBTQ person in that situation, how can I best support you?
yeah. And speaking on support, how can person self-advocate for themselves and others in school?
Okay, so in the United States, it has gotten a lot easier to get gender support in schools. It's important to know that all students in public schools, grades 6 through 12, have access to what is known as a gender support plan. Each school's gender support plan is going to look a little bit different, but generally speaking, it contains the same component parts. The gender support plan is going to identify if parents and guardians know of your gender and pronoun and name preferences, and not only do they know about them, but are they affirming and supportive of them? Then the student will also be asked in communication, with parents, how would you like to be referred and what name what pronoun. So there's a lot of choice there. Um, uh, in names and pronouns used with parents and guardians and at school, in classes, how your name is going to appear on paperwork, stuff like that. The next step to discuss is confidentiality and disclosure, and you get to choose which members of your school team know about this. You can also pick and choose which teachers and which school staff you would like have access to this knowledge and information. But you get to choose how much and what information you want to be shared within your school. Other things that can be included in the gender support plan include specific bathrooms you go to. And like I mentioned, changing for gym class, the locker rooms, and even the type of uniforms you wear if they're different for females versus males. And then in gender support plans, you will go over various scenarios and you can then identify what your ideal outcome would be in those kinds of scenarios. So there's different scenarios that are involved and included in the gender support plan so that you get the most comprehensive plan possible so that you can feel the most comfortable and safe you can at school so that you can focus on being a student, which is what you're there for.
Yeah, my school doesn't have anything nearly as expansive as this outlines. My school just was like, if you have preferred pronouns or preferred name, we'll take that. We have to let your parents know, kind of dealio that they had going on. But then again, I didn't have to search for a gender support plan because I'm cisgender. I don't need one. So I don't really know if my school has one buried deep within it.
Mm-hmm.
I only know what they
Yeah.
broadcast to all students.
Mm-hmm. So in the gender support plan, you'll identify who's the support coordinator or the student administrative support team, who is the school contact person, who is the other designated school contact person if the number one person is not available. What should the student do if their number one contact person isn't available? How public or private will information about the student's gender be? You get to choose with district, with teachers, with other students, how public or private you want your information to be. If the student desires privacy, how will the school navigate real or suspected compromises of privacy? How will staff respond to questions about the student's gender from other students, from other staff members, from parents or community members that are not listed as safe adults on this plan? How will privacy be maintained during and in various situations like registration, enrollment, attendance, um, home communication, your student ID, standardized tests, after school programs, school photos, the yearbook, um, what gender is going a name is going to be listed on IT accounts such as your school Gmail, and just any other things that the school needs to anticipate regarding the individual's privacy, and how those situations should be handled. Facilities and extracurricular activities. What's the plan for restrooms, locker rooms, field trips? Those kinds of things, everything is really, really outlined there to support and ensure that everybody that the student wants involved is involved and is really, really familiar with the plan, knows what actionable steps to take, who's responsible when a certain situation happens. So it's very comprehensive and an awesome, awesome resource.
Yeah. Um, Now can we talk about what is cisgender privilege?
So cisgender means straight, right? So that means a heterosexual male with a heterosexual female. That is a cisgendered individual or couple. And so there's some privilege that goes along with that, right? Like if you end up in the emergency room and you're cisgendered, you don't have to worry that your gender will keep you from receiving appropriate treatment or that all of your medical issues won't just be seen as the result of your gender. Um, Hollywood accurately depicts people of your gender in films and television without tokenizing your identity as the focus of a dramatic storyline or the punchline of a joke. Cisgendered individuals can flirt or form a relationship and not worry that their biological status may cause um, them to feel rejected or attacked. And it won't cause their partner to question their sexual orientation with them. So, cisgender privilege, um, when I tell somebody that um, I was married to a man or that I am currently in a romantic relationship with a man, nobody says, well, how long did you know that you were heterosexual? How old were you when you first realized that you were attracted to men? Right? Nobody has ever asked me that,
And it
right?
seems like an absurd question to be asked to begin with. It seems kind
Right.
of silly. Like,
Right.
that just
Right.
So,
seems weird.
nobody has those conversations with cisgendered individuals or couples, and that is cisgender privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so, so important that that we kind of spread the word about what this privilege is because if we don't recognize it, it's so easy to just like brush away like an everyday interaction without thinking about what that could be like for someone who doesn't have that privilege because society had dictated so to speak. But yeah, I just think it's so important that we know that this exists so that we can work to make sure that there's no perceived feeling of right versus wrong with these kinds of situations. And I do have an additional question to go along with that. Is could you please tell us about some ways that cisgender people can help support the community without overstepping any boundaries? In pertaining to what they have and haven't experienced.
The first thing is to never make assumptions and always ask. Ask, how can I support you? How can I be an ally? What do you need? So if you identify with the gender you were assigned at birth, there are a number of unearned benefits that you get that many folks don't realize. And it's really important that cisgender individuals recognize how easy it is and how we take for granted the things that are easy.
What are some statistics that we have about mental health and LGBTQ?
Unfortunately, the statistics aren't pretty. Um, and I still think that it's very important that we speak about them and name them because that's one important way for us to um, end this. 41% of LGBTQ youth have seriously considered suicide in the past year. In a previous episode, we talked a lot about suicidality and we learned the difference between passive suicidal ideation and active suicidal ideation. So, 41% of LGBTQ youth have seriously considered suicide in the past year. That could be active or passive. 56% of LGBTQ young people who wanted mental health care in the past year were not able to get it. That is not okay. That is over half, and that is not okay. And so when I say young people, we're referencing school aged individuals. Okay. Transgender and non-binary young people who reported having the respect and support of people they live with reported a lower rate of attempting suicide. And having the source of support is probably the number one protective factor for any individual, and it's even more important for individuals within the LGBTQ community. Fewer than 40% of LGBTQ young people found their homes to be LGBTQ affirming. Um, that's that's scary. That's really scary. And so to not have somebody in the home that you feel safe with, um, that's a huge risk factor for safety. Nearly 1 in 3 LGBTQ youth said their mental health was poor most of the time or always due to anti-LGBTQ policies and legislation. It certainly can lead to feelings of hopelessness when you look at the way that the LGBTQ community and the trans community have been treated as of late in our political climate.
I know I live in Texas that isn't super great, not a shining star for LGBTQ affirming anything. So
Mm-hmm.
I know that. And it's not great for getting mental health care either, especially not if you are LGBTQ and looking for mental health.
Right.
Yeah, so
So if you do need help, there are tons of resources. Um, there are various websites that you can look at. Asexual Visibility and Education Network, asexuality.org, bisexual.org, Get Real, getrealeducation.org. It's pronounced metrosexual.com, transwhat.org, wearetheyouth.org. Those are some amazing websites for learning. There are also tons of organizations that are doing lots of good for the LGBTQ community. Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network, Family Acceptance Project, It Gets Better, .org is another incredibly amazing project, an organization. National Gay and Lesbian Task Force, the taskforce.org. The Not All Like That, NALT project, um, and the Trevor Project. A lot of the information, resources, graphics, things like that that we talked about today came from the Trevor Project and the Safety Project as well. In previous episodes, we have talked about 988 being a wonderful resource for individuals that are at risk of thinking about suicide or at risk for harming themselves. In addition to that amazing resource, there are some specific um, hotlines that you can reach, that the LGBTQ community can reach out to. So not only are the individuals at these hotlines trained in mental health services and support, the individuals at these particular hotlines are also further trained in supporting LGBTQ individuals. So you can call 1-866-488-7386, or you can text the word Trevor, Trevor, to 202-304-1200. There's also a trans lifeline, a peer support service run by trans people for trans and questioning callers. And so they have both a phone number to call in the United States and Canada. However, if you're in the state of Illinois and you are interested in getting additional mental health support or psychiatric care or educational advocacy, You can reach out to to our team at Therapy Etc. You can learn more about our practice and all the services that we offer at therapy-etc.com. And in order to receive mental health or medication support, individuals do need to be in the state of Illinois. However, we can provide educational advocacy for any school-aged individual within the United States. Thank you so much for having me and asking these really important questions.
Yeah, thank you for so much for sharing all of this information. I think that, like I've said before, this is all such important information to keep in mind. And yeah.
Mm.
Kairi, I don't know if I can hear you. Ellen, were
I'm
you
so
able?
sorry. I keep muting
No,
my headset
all
because
good.
I'm the other room loud noises, so I keep muting my headset and it
That's
keeps
okay.
great. But I was saying, thank you for listening. If anyone has a topic or question you'd like us to cover, please feel free to email us at students@humanityrising.org. Sorry, my headset was muted. I
That's
keep
okay.
forgetting. I keep turning them off because loud noises, just to not be rude to anyone who else was talking.
Well, I apologize if anybody heard a barking dog.
I'm sorry if anyone heard someone cooking.
Well, thanks so much for having me, and I can't wait until we continue exploring other areas of mental health on our next episode.